Hello everyone, and here we are ready to talk about Chapter 3, all about electronic gaming and the media playground. And the first part of your text lecture online concerns a lot of the history and hardware development of video gaming. And here we're going to talk about virtual reality, virtual worlds, and how they are changing our culture. So let's begin by talking about massively multiplayer online role-playing games, such as World of Warcraft, Second Life, Eve. I'm sure a lot of you have had experience in playing with these, or you've had a close friend, or maybe your spouse or your boyfriend or girlfriend also plays these types of games. I know my husband played Eve for quite a while with his buddies, and these were built to create personalized interactions and place people on virtual teams and in situations to accomplish specific tasks, playing to the adventure side that people long for. And what's interesting about massively multiplayer online games is that they move beyond a traditional video game script where you would play a character, but that character has pre-programmed communications and things they have to do, whereas in MMORPGs, they offer a lot more autonomy and ability for people to shape their own types of social interaction within these worlds. These virtual worlds often enhance our entertainment culture, and the desire that drives most media consumption of video games is experiencing situations firsthand that people most likely won't ever experience in their life. Granted, there could be a zombie apocalypse coming, but in case there isn't, at least you can use video games to simulate what that experience could be like. I'm not saying that we all look at video games and take them as reality, but something in our brains and in our desires for entertainment just pushes us into these virtual worlds and really satisfies our need for entertainment and our desires to be entertained. And then also within these virtual worlds, real social connections happen, and we visit places and become characters we probably won't achieve in our physical lives. So my big question to you is, are these valid and real experiences? And what do you think really pulls us and immerses us into these virtual realities as opposed to our physical realities? Granted, virtual realities do manifest as face-to-face interactions. I mean, Rock Band and those types of games are not as big as they were maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but think about other types of face-to-face interactions that happen with video games. A lot of people attend conventions and have their own gaming parties and use it as a social connection point. I'm sure pretty much all of you have had experiences with either yourself or your family or your friends staying up all night, eating junk food, playing video games. I mean, that kind of seems to be the hallmark of teenage interaction in a lot of ways. And granted, adult interaction. I'm not going to put that in a box. So although a lot of people fear the isolation factors of gaming and online environments, a lot of research really does show that people are feeling more connected online than ever. Some other examples are, fantasy football and social media platform games, and then the communities of support that can stem from these games. I mean, I personally know several couples who have become lifelong partners because of virtual reality and even had their weddings or ceremonies performed in World of Warcraft or Eve. So it's an interesting time that we live in. Granted, our text does bring up the idea of, can video games be addicting? Can they force us to forget our real life? This is an image from a video gaming cafe in Korea where people are actively competing with each other in games and scores are posted live time, and so the competition goes just from virtual to the real world, physical world, if you will. And this just raises a lot of questions. As video games are built to be addictive by design with like elaborate achievement assist systems and just the desire to finish a storyline or an adventure, is it fair that we do allow businesses to put in these devices to get our brains to want that interaction more and more and more? And there's some studies showing that a lot of video game playing at the addiction level is associated with increased incidences of depression, anxiety, and social phobias. However, I think most people would argue that we can segment, we can keep our virtual reality virtual and our physical reality physical. However, I did post a pretty interesting video. It's actually an advertisement for one of the Lara Croft Tomb Raider videos, but it intersplices real people saying that they are Lara Croft and that they are experiencing her experiences. So check that out and maybe use that for a potential blog topic or discussion forum topic as well. There's also, of course, a lot of concern about the power of video games to engender or create violence. You see this particularly after perhaps a school shooting might happen or something along those lines, of violent act in our society. And you see in the media, you see politicians standing up and saying, it's all about video games. Video games completely inspired this act of violence. And that is absolutely an oversimplification of the psychological issues going on in people. There is a lot of hot research activity in direct effects media. So that's where people are just looking for a culprit to blame. Video games cause shootings, or rap music directly causes people to be on drugs. I mean, you hear those comparisons so much in our culture, and as with any oversimplification, there really is a lot more going on than just one factor. We as humans are so complicated, and actually our minds are really not that permeable. A lot of mass media research began during the World War I and II eras, when people were very concerned about propaganda and also wondering if those messages were brainwashing people. And over the years, media researchers have found that no. Propaganda, yes, can persuade people, but there's a lot of factors going on in our brains. One theory that we talk about a lot is called schema theory, and it's this concept that our brains are a grid, and this grid helps us process the world around us. This grid in our brains helps us determine what messages and sensory information to listen to, what to put action to, and what to ignore. And we really need this to survive, especially as we are hit with more and more media messages and sensory messages every day. And so we build these schemas subconsciously and consciously sometimes throughout our lives based on our experiences as children, as adults, and as we build our belief systems and also our preferences. All of these create our mind filters. And these mind filters are very hard to overcome. They can be overcome. Persuasive theory is legit. There are definitely ways to convince someone to change course and change beliefs, but think about if you've ever had a huge life-changing moment so far in your life, what steps occurred to get you to change your mind and in a sense do a 180 in how you thought about the situation. So I say all that to say, I don't believe that video games and violence in video games directly causes violence in our culture, but perhaps they do factor into how we view gender roles and how we treat each other. These are big questions that really have no solid answers because we are so complex as humans. And that kind of segues into a conversation about how much is too much and should video games be regulated. And honestly, there aren't any real official regulations for video games. There was a 2011 landmark Supreme Court case granting video games freedom of speech. And there's a great quote from our Justice Scalia in our book. So make sure to read through that and to help you understand why video games have been granted free speech. And it really comes down to the idea that people as individuals should be allowed to judge what content is good content. And if we were to stop a video game that might have really racy or socially challenging taboo information or situations in it, if we were to stop it from coming out before it even came out, that would be completely illegal. And the Supreme Court still sides with the concept that free speech means that we all have the chance to decide what's important to us and what is art and what constitutes an entertainment experience. However, the industry has a self-regulating mechanism, and that's, when you check out a video game in a store or online, you can see a rating on the side, and that's definitely a self-imposed measure just to be a guide for people as they experience the games. But really, that's it for regulation for video games. So, lots to think about in virtual reality. Is it as legitimate and real of an experience as physical reality? And perhaps our culture will never finish that debate, and I'm interested to hear how you all fall on the issue. So head over to the discussion forum and let's hash out some of these ideas on there.